Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Real Hawk Talk. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter at Hawk Blogger, and we got a fun show tonight. It is always good to get the crew together. We've got at least Jeff Simmons and I. We're hoping that Nathan Ernst can make it. He's got a daughter's coaching thing that he's doing, and a lot of family duties. So if it works out, hopefully he'll join. But if not, Jeff and I have plenty that we've wanted to catch up on for sure. And that is Real Jeff Simmons at Real Jeff Simmons on Twitter. Jeff, man, you just showed me you're like half gonna be here for the show, and like, or maybe like 20% here for the show, and like 80% watching every other sport going on. What's on your TV right now, man?
I'm in my man cave, which is we have a detached garage in the back of our house. The previous owners had a full gym in here. I went a different direction. I put 350-inch TVs. So I got the NBA playoffs on. I got the NHL playoffs on. One TV's off. So I'm giving you 66% of my attention.
Okay. All right.
But you're lucky. You have the only unbiased member of a Seahawks Twitter here.
Oh my God. We should talk about that. I
That's
mean,
a deep cut, eh?
I don't know if there's anybody that I enjoy on Twitter more right now than Grant Cohen. Like, he is probably my favorite account on Twitter. I like, not only does he make me laugh with like half what he does, not only does he often try to take on very, have 49ers takes that piss people off but make Seahawks fans happy. But he's also like, he's actually like backs it up with like genuine, like good evaluation, and a lot of his stuff's pretty good. So tell people what's going on for people that are not following this on Twitter. What's happening between Grant and other folks of 49ers media?
So yeah, that was a pretty deep cut I made. There's probably one listener who understood what I was talking about. But yeah, Grant Cohen is the 49ers. He's like doesn't work for like a newspaper. He's sort of like how Corbin Smith likes but Grant reminds me if you like took Joe Fan and infused him with Evan, and it would make this like hilarious pot stirring. But what Grant does is he's a little out there, but he makes coherent points, and he's really good at what he does. And you're right, he makes me laugh. So what happened was, if you followed me or Brian, there's one 49ers beat guy, works for The Athletic. And he is very consistent in his opinions. He only will say everything the 49ers does is the best. He used to claim that Jimmy Garoppolo was better than Aaron Rodgers and all this stuff. So their first round pick, Ricky Pearsall, which he was a bit of a reach, all things being fair. And his first day of rookie minicamp, David Lombardi wrote about how good he looked in practice. And Grant took issue with that. He said he had 4 targets and he didn't make a single catch and dropped one. So Grant's like, come on, dude. Like, you can't say this guy looks good in practice. And Lombardi goes on his YouTube channel and basically calls Grant out for being have no credibility. And he was really taking shots at him. And Grant actually came out a couple weeks ago. He kind of played jabs at Lombardi. Grant's like, oh, no, we get along. Like, we're friends. And so I'm listening to this podcast. I see one of the other 49ers content creators is a guy named Rob Stats Guerrera, who used to work for Mike Florio. He's actually a big Mariners fan, weirdly enough. I don't know how someone's a 49ers and Mariners fan. That does not compute. But either way, the two of them are doing this podcast, and they're having an honest conversation about Lombardi. And they're just saying, like, dude, all you have to do is once criticize the team. And, like, I didn't realize, like, that 49ers fans didn't like him. And 49ers content creators are annoyed by him.
By who? By Lombardi, right?
By Lombardi.
Yeah.
They're just like, dude, you can't be this one-sided and have any credibility. And listen, I've taken my shots. He's never responded to me. And I find it embarrassing what he does, to be honest. But Lombardi puts out this video on his YouTube channel today, taking all these swipes at Grant and saying he referred to himself as the only unbiased version of like 49ers content creator. And that is so far from the truth. I'm surprised, like, no one at The Athletic has like basically stop this guy. But I think you put it in a tweet, like, I can't believe how delusional these guys are. And like the joke that like one of the guys I was talking to me about was like, how could you like take yourself seriously? And how could you, all he's doing is chasing clicks, and the Athletic, a lot of their money comes from clicks, but for Lombardi to come out and call himself the only unbiased 49ers reporter, that's, I don't know. I don't even know what to say to that. I was on a tangent there, but it's like, it's almost a fascinating saga.
That was a great recap. And 49ers Twitter is, I've engaged enough with Grant stuff that now like Twitter thinks that I'm a 49ers fan. I get a lot of 49ers stuff in my feed, and it's like a fascinating group. I like Lombardi definitely appeals to I think the core of the 49ers fan base. It just wants to hear how amazing they are, that they are the best ever, the best franchise ever, the best coach ever, the best players ever. Brock Purdy's going to be the next Tom Brady. He's going to be better than Tom Brady. Like, Lombardi is so hyperbolic in all of his takes, and it's all just ridiculously positive. And he's making a lot of money off of it. I mean, he's got a ton of engagement, and like, it's a large fan base, and so whatever. And then Grant is just like, I can't, it's like a fascinating thing that he can be so oppositional, so contrarian, and have as large of a following as Lombardi. It kind of goes against a lot of, I think, the logic of how this stuff works. But I get a kick out of it watching it from the sidelines. Nathan Ernst was able to join us. So happy to see Nathan. I feel like it's been forever. At Nathan E11 on Twitter. Nathan, I don't know if you've been following any of this silliness going on the 49ers side, or if you have any thoughts on Mr. Lombardi and Mr. Cohen.
I follow it because you guys keep throwing all this stuff in the group chat, and I click the links. But no, other than that, I feel like, Seahawks Twitter will keep me busy enough if I let it. I don't need to worry about the Niners Twitter drama.
Yeah. Well, we've got this troublemaker in chat. He is a YouTube member, so I feel obliged to put him on air here. This is Josh Cashman. He says, who is the Grant Cohen and David Lombardi of Seahawks Twitter? Alan Bond, who's also a YouTube member, says Lombardi equals Greg Bell, not because of the characteristics, because I despise them both. Gosh. Ouch, Alan.
What does it say about Seahawks coverage that there isn't a Lombardi that I can really think of? I mean, I don't think there is one, right?
I don't think there is. Not like Lombardi is uniquely positive about everything. I mean, there's guys that.
There's the Sammy dude who is very, very positive, but not in the antagonistic way. Like, he's just kind of carved out his own thing.
Yeah, that's just like fluff. Like, superficial. Like, he says nothing.
Yeah,
he asks like random like clicky questions, but he doesn't really. I mean, in the sense that he like adds nothing to the conversation, I guess maybe.
I feel like he's got a very like overall very positive.
He is very positive though.
Yeah, but Lombardi is just positive. He's antagonistic. Like,
right.
He was going at like Packers fans last week. He's like, anyone who would think that Jordan Love is better than Brock Purdy, like, isn't worth my time. I'm like, dude, you're like a reporter. Like, you talk like you're in like a fight on Reddit. It's embarrassing.
He thinks the 49ers are the most amazing thing ever, and he will fight you about it. Which that part is the thing that isn't like, there are definitely more positive leaning folks in Seahawks fandom, but they're not usually so aggressive about it.
No, yeah. I think what makes Seahawks Twitter so like good for my heart is everyone's miserable all the time. I think that's what I love about Seahawks Twitter. I can't stand like a lot of the Toronto teams have these guys that are like waving the flag, and these teams are like so mediocre. And I'm like, what I love about Seahawks Twitter is like, I feel at home. We're miserable about everything. Like,
oh, Jeff, that's so funny. I think that if Lombardi was not a paid media member and was just a blogger, honestly, it wouldn't even be a blip. I know so many Like that is a more typical blogger, podcaster kind of persona of like super fan. But the fact that he tries to like, even his picture is like persona, his brand is like, I am the most buttoned up professional reporter, but all of my tweets and takes are the most like fangirly, like, oh my God, like it's just so obnoxious. Like you don't get to be both, like be one or be the other.
They the podcast with Grant and I can think Rob Stats Guerrera had such a funny example. I didn't see this at first, but Lombardi put out a series of tweets. The 49ers signed like the most average swing tackle.
They did.
It was like the equivalent of signing Stone Forsythe. And he's like,
Worse.
that is as good as a roster move as they could have made to sign like the 68th PFF ranked tackle. It's like, they're like, as good as a move is like, you have to be sick in the head, like to think like
well, where are tackles 1 through 67, Jeff? Did you look that
they're
up?
starters.
Maybe
They're
it was.
starters.
Can you guys imagine if Evan Hill was a paid media member?
That would be incredible.
Like, because Evan is Grant in a lot of ways. Like Grant is actually more, I think, grounded than Evan is. But like, I think the persona of Evan as a paid media member and how silly that sounds. And obviously, like Evan's my favorite Seahawks Twitter follow. I told him that we were ranking favorite follows, and it's true. Like Evan's still my favorite Seahawks Twitter follow. But the idea of him being a paid media member is so ridiculous, and that's what it is for Lombardi to be a paid media member. And I'm not saying Evan is Lombardi, but just like as a clear fan, does not belong in the profession, does not belong interviewing guys like in the press conferences and stuff.
How
like
long
that.
would it take the Seahawks PR folks to ban Evan and revoke all his assets if Evan was a professional?
I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to scrub his existence from all of social media, even now. I mean, I made the mistake of introducing Evan to John Schneider once. I think John's been trying to block his calls ever since. So
We got to send Evan to like the Senior Bowl or the Combine or something this year.
Yeah, it's like the guy that used to have the puppet with the dog with the cigar.
Oh yeah,
ask all the
Triumph?
questions.
Yeah,
that could be Evan. That could definitely be Evan. So we actually had some news this week. We had OTAs. I don't know how much you guys have picked up on any of this or listened to any of this. There were Rayshon Jenkins got his first interview. He talked about he had the same offer from the 49ers, speaking of the 49ers, but decided to stay in Seattle or come to Seattle because we don't have an income tax. Primarily. Mike Macdonald talked about the fact that the guys have actually struggled a little bit with install and that, they're going to slow things down until the guys get it. There's been talk from Geno Smith. He and Sam Howell, they and a bunch of guys went to Cabo. I could go on, but I'm curious. Anything that caught your attention? Jeff, I'll start with you.
Couple things. Mike Macdonald, once football is involved, feels way more comfortable in his skin. Like during the draft pressers, and I think Nathan talked with us a couple weeks ago, how he's just kind of like awkward. And once football gets involved, he becomes a much more impressive speaker. He seems way more self-assured, and he's pretty revealing in how he speaks. Pete just threw out so much fluff, and I was so used to hearing just smoke blown for whether it was just everything's great. Every time Macdonald talks, I kind of like what I'm hearing. So personnel wise, not much, but I found his takes just like talking about the struggles, talking about how they were missing checks, talking about what they've installed. I found that refreshingly honest after listening to Pete the last 14 years, where he kind of sounded like a politician. And I'm growing more and more respect for Macdonald. I think in terms of personnel, not much. People were worried about Christian Haynes being on the second team, but it was like the first day of OTAs. The first, like, if you remember where like Richard Sherman he was on like the third team corner, Cam Chancellor was, Golden Tate, all these guys. And they all became great Seahawks. So I would not stress about where people were. Russell Wilson was behind Tavares Jackson at this point. So personnel-wise, not. I just found Macdonald refreshingly interesting.
Who was the guy? Lawyer Malloy.
Mhm.
When you saying Cam Chancellor, just reminded me that like Chancellor was a backup and split reps for like his entire rookie year with Lawyer
Yeah.
Malloy, who was not like capital L Lawyer, capital M Malloy. He was 40-year-old. Yeah, last year.
Yeah, Cam Chancellor was a goal line safety and a special teams player, like a short yardage safety. That was his role as a rookie. Yeah, there were a few things that I thought were at least interesting. I have not verified some of this, with my own eyes, but Mike Salk reported, and so did oh my gosh, Moira,
Jim Mora?
Moira Dooley, or what's the one? His producer. I'm totally spacing on her name. I feel really bad. Anyway, she's great. Anyway, they both said that Tariq Woolen has significantly bulked up.
I noticed that just from watching a little video or whatever that the Twitter account had put out, because Witherspoon came out, and Witherspoon's not big, but he's not small. And then Woolen came out, and I was like, oh, he's looking kind of, he's thick, he's built, like he's a big dude.
It is Moira Dooley, by the way, at MAURA_DOOL. I feel like I owe her a shout out after butchering her name. Yeah, I think given that guy has been a problem in terms of staying healthy, at least last year at times, and also not really being willing to make tackles against the run, that could be a meaningful change. If he could, because I'm not sure he was a fit for this defense, but if he can add some bulk, maybe. The other thing I'd say is Devin Witherspoon. I mean, there's not a single person that doesn't just see greatness in that guy and love that guy. When you hear Mike Macdonald talk about it, when you hear him talk about Tariq Woolen, he's very serious, and he's like, "There's greatness in there. We're gonna, kind of make him get it." You ask him about Devin Witherspoon, he immediately starts laughing. He almost like giddy. And he just smiles and just talks about it. You hear Rayshawn Jenkins talk about Devin Witherspoon. He's like, honestly, I was just thinking about today. I've never seen someone who can break on the ball the way that guy can. In all my years playing, never seen it. And so I think it's great news about Devin Witherspoon. And then there's an interesting comment that Macdonald made about Geno Smith. And this is not like one of those big blow up, things about Geno Smith, but he said, we're asking him to take the next step as a player and as a leader. I think that was the quote. What do you think he means by that? Like, what do you think next step would mean?
This in response to his little temper tantrum on Twitter.
No. I mean, I don't think so. It was a part of the press conference. So I thought that was an interesting phrase.
Yeah, the leader part makes me think it could be something like, dude, get off Twitter. Like, I know that part of the chip on the shoulder is part of his thing, but at some point, like, you gotta chill. Maybe, I don't know. The player part, I have no idea what like the next step for him is, other than just consistency.
Yeah. That's what I was wondering. Jeff, any thoughts there? Like, what for you? If you were going to say Geno's got to take the next step as a player, what would that be?
Nathan hit it on the head. He's had stretches where he's looked like a Pro Bowl level player. We saw it the first 6 or 8 games in 22, and then last year down the stretch. But one of the things a good quarterback has to be is consistent. And he has stretches where he looks really good, but he has shown a ceiling when he's not getting really good protection, or there's just games where he's just off. He's been an inconsistent. He's been a really streaky player. I think for him to take that next step, you need to see that kind of play sustained. And you've seen a lot of teams, and for some reason, I don't know, he hasn't played great against some of the better teams in the league. He's played really good against indoor teams. And I think if you want to be a really good team, I think for him to hit that next step, I think we need to see a more consistent level of play and closer to the ceiling. And I think they saw what they did to him at Baltimore last year, and they obliterated the whole team. But they saw the lowest point of Geno last year, so there's certainly a ceiling with him.
So before we get to patron questions, one of the things that teased about for this particular episode is defensive rookie of the year. And I don't know if you guys, I mean, some people would just think this is a non-story, but I'll tell you, it's annoyed me a little bit as someone who's a big Byron Murphy fan. And I know it's annoyed some other fans. And actually, it seems like it's annoying Byron Murphy as well. He didn't get invited to the NFL rookie, whatever that was. And I don't exactly know how they decide who goes to it or not, but he wasn't invited. If you look at, ESPN has had it. I think PFF has had it. A number of these places, CBS has had odds for defensive rookie of the year or like their picks, top picks. Byron Murphy doesn't show up anywhere. Like, it's not like he's not the number one. And so that sucks. He doesn't show up on the list as like even a candidate to be a defensive rookie of the year. And I'm first of all, before I'm going to look up like what the actual odds are in a second. But do you guys think like, is that odd to you? Does that like register to you as an odd thing?
Yeah, I mean, I would think that he would be up there with at least in the top 5, right? I mean, Latu versus the corners, maybe. And I don't know why anybody else would be ahead of Murphy after and I wouldn't necessarily put those guys ahead of Murphy, but I can't see an argument for anyone else.
Jeff?
Yeah, it's pretty shocking because he was the second defensive player in the whole draft to go. B, he was projected to going into the draft that night. He was the favorite to be taken 8th overall to Atlanta. And there's articles that came out that said he'd be a top 10 pick in a lot of other drafts. And it's not like he plays a position that doesn't have like counting stats. And he didn't have a ton of sacks last year, but we've seen so many defensive tackles just kind of take over games. So I don't know if it's an oversight or maybe they're just looking at the edge rushers who might have more counting stats, but it's pretty surprising given where he was drafted, his reputation, and that is like you couldn't find someone who said like the Seahawks made a bad pick. When was the last time anyone said that? But
yeah,
is it because the Seahawks generally are not expected to do well, which I also don't totally understand. Like, I think Vegas has them at like 7 wins or something like that.
Yeah, 7.5.
7.5. Yeah.
And then what was the thing that you were looking at where they were like at 4 wins?
Oh, that was Super Sports, and
Yeah,
all the statisticians out there got very annoyed with me for how I was doing it. But if you go by the probabilities for each game, or if you go by who is favored in each game, the Seahawks are only favored in 5 games out of their 17.
I see.
Yeah. So what was your point? So they're going to be bad. So you just think they're not going to get enough?
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's what people are just generally overlooking Seattle and bad team. So they think he's in a bad situation. Defensive tackles can do counting stats, but like not necessarily.
That's what I was wondering about a little bit, and I'll talk about that in a second. But just so you guys have it, these are from odds perspective. The odds for defensive rookie of the year: Dallas Turner is number 1. Latu is number 2. Jared Verse is number 3. Terrion Arnold is number 4. Kenyon Mitchell is number 5. And then it gets to Byron Murphy at 6, who's really next to Chop Robinson. He's actually equal to Chop Robinson on Draft Duels odds.
Why is Dallas Turner number 1?
I think Brian Flores. I think they think he's going to unleash him.
Huh.
I think it's pure. But yeah, I'm with you. He slipped on draft day. He fell under Murphy.
None of us liked him that much.
And that team too, like JJ McCarthy is going to be putting up 10-point leads for Turner to just be going off on passing downs. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I will say, as far as when let's go through the last few rookies of the year, and you'll hear as I go through these positionally, defensive tackle is not that common, at least recently. So last year was Will Anderson. Year before was Sauce Gardner. Year before that was Micah Parsons. Year before that, Chase Young. So you've got 3 out of the 4 are edge players. Year before that, Nick Bosa. So 5 out of 6. Shaquille Leonard, 6 out of 7. I forgot that it says outside linebacker, but I thought he was an off-ball linebacker more recently.
Kind of did a little bit of everything, right?
Yeah. I'd say more off ball.
Yeah. It says outside here, but I'm like, he's more of an off-ball. Anyway, Marshawn Lattimore, so another corner. Joey Bosa in 2016, so another edge. Another corner, Marcus Peters in 2015. And then you got to go all the way back 10 years to Aaron Donald in 2014, the last time an defensive tackle won Defensive Rookie of the Year. Interestingly, 1 year earlier, it was also defensive tackle Sheldon Richardson. So it is not the most common position to win that award. If you were to go back, I mean, you could really like Ndamukong Suh in 2010, but otherwise you could go all the way back to, 95. And there's only been Aaron Donald, Sheldon Richardson, and Ndamukong Suh as defensive tackles who have won the award. It's a little surprising.
Yeah, I'd say most draft classes usually have a top 5 to 10 edge player. And a lot of the names you had were either just like elite prospects coming into the league, like Parsons, Bosa, some of those guys. This draft didn't have one. And all the guys were kind of flawed. And Brian, I remember you predicted the fall, and they all did. And I think that's what makes this draft a little different. Like Will Anderson last year, top 5 pick, top 3 pick. This draft didn't have one of those guys. And that's where maybe they're just going with history, but I don't know if any of those guys are going to hit in year 1.
I can even understand, like, go ahead, Nathan. Yeah.
I was going to say, Murphy fits the mold of the guys who have won it, right? You know, he's not like the dude that Carolina drafted a couple years ago that's like 350 pounds or whatever. He's not Sweat. So, yeah, I understand him not being a favorite. That's not a surprise at all. But that he's so low or just left off altogether is bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't have even probably registered for me if he was number 3 on all these lists. You know, like I would get that, but he's not even showing up. And he has quote tweeted or quote, he's posted it on his Instagram pretty much every time he's been left off. His mom at his press conference when he signed up here said, "We know the Seahawks have been overlooked the last 2 years for Defensive Rookie of the Year." And so that, like, they're well aware of it, which I love personally. Like, I love that his family's like, they're coming out with guns firing. And I don't know. I look at the situation. The Seahawks had the worst defense in the NFL by a lot of different metrics last year. He's coming into a situation where he could be the catalyst for why it is a turnaround. He's going to be playing next to Leonard Williams. He's going to have Mike Macdonald, who completely unlocked Madubuike in Baltimore. I'm not a bettor. I bet on the market. I'm an investor, but I'm not a bettor, like sports bettor. If I was to put money down, like, I think I'd take that bet right now. Like, I think Byron Murphy is as good of a chance as you're going to win from 6th highest odds as you're probably going to find.
He's not going to win, though.
He's going to win. He's going to freaking win, Nathan.
Jared Verse.
I do like Jared Verse. I do. Yeah.
Too.
I think Latu's would be my best guess of who wins. I'm still just not a Dallas Turner guy. I think we'll see, but I honestly, I can very much picture Byron Murphy being the most dominant defensive rookie this year, and people recognizing that. And I think it's not like Tariq Woolen where he was drafted in the 5th round and nobody knew about him and you had to like build up his persona. And even Devin Witherspoon, where there was other defensive players that had bigger names. Byron Murphy was on everyone's lips during the draft, and And so everyone already knows him and is kind of going to be watching. I don't know. I don't think it's crazy. I'm not suggesting anybody puts a bet down. But if you're going to bet, I'd bet on Byron Murphy.
Hey, if the media or whoever's making these lists wants to piss off Byron Murphy,
Yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead. If he's got another chip on his shoulder, keep doing it.
I was going to ask you guys something, and then I'm like regretting the thought because I know my own answer to this, and it won't be a good end. But let's do it anyway.
Yeah.
Have you seen the pictures of Byron Murphy at practice? Like,
no,
like
I don't think so.
I'm gonna pull up one.
I think I know what you're referring to.
I'm gonna pull up one, and I have to show you the picture in order for you to be able to like answer the question I'm gonna pose here. And I gotta give.
I swear to God, if you pull up that nipple picture,
I don't know what you're talking about. That doesn't exist.
Wasn't Josh Cashman or anything.
No, Josh. Oh my God, that was the worst. Okay, here we go. Let me share this. Okay. And I'll zoom in a little bit if I can. Here we go. Look at this guy. Look at this absolute unit. Jen Mass says his thighs are mature oaks. Okay. When's the last time you've seen a Seahawks defensive rookie that looked like this? That are like just looking at him, you're like, oh, that's a dude.
LJ Collier.
No way. I don't
Same number.
believe it. That's not real.
Oh, he's not wearing LJ Collier's number, is he?
He
no.
is. He is.
No. Oh no.
LJ Collier.
So no. Who? Give me your honest answer.
I don't know.
I can't think of one because Chancellor did, but Chancellor was as under the radar as a rookie. Like
Chancellor.
No one
Chancellor is actually that's a really good answer. And if I had thought about that, the first name that came to my mind
about him. Yeah.
Aaron Curry was the first.
Oh yeah.
I was like, oh man, that guy looks like he's gonna just take the league by storm. So that's why I regretted the question in my head. But I don't know. I see that guy move. I see him play. Like I'm bought in. I'm so bought in. I'm pilled, as you guys say. I don't even know what that really means at this point, but I am that. That's what the kids say. All right, you guys ready to do some Patreon questions?
Yep.
Okay.
Well,
Nathan, you want to do Patreon questions?
If you have them pulled up, go for it. Otherwise, I'll grab them.
I like it when you do it. There's a lot of me talking on this show, so
you seem to choose Dana to do it a lot. But yeah.
Well, you know, I like to spread the love. And Dana's
are you at all concerned? As I pull this up, are you at all concerned? Because I think one of the big selling points with Macdonald, and one of the things I've been impressed with, is how he talks about the stuff that you can do to confuse an offense for free. He talks about the stuff that, like, he says for free a lot, right? Like how you sim pressure and do these different things to confuse an offense, and it doesn't cost you anything to teach your defense. So, and Jeff, like you were saying, he immediately is like super interesting when he starts to talk about football, and like very well spoken. Like you can tell he's a teacher at heart. So how concerned are you, if at all, that like installs and stuff aren't going well right off the bat? Is he just oversharing? Is this a normal thing? Or like, would you expect more from what, his strengths should be?
Is that a question for Jeff?
It's just for whoever.
Brian, go ahead. But I've been saying pretty consistently, I think there's going to be an adjustment period, and it might be pretty rough. When Baltimore installed that defense, they had some really ugly games. There was one where Tua was just embarrassing their secondary where they were just in the wrong spot. And he actually talked about it. He said year one, it's going to be a challenge. Year two, I really expect this defense to take off. And they've played a very vanilla, generic defense. And Rayshon Jenkins was talking yesterday about how much thinking there is. I think there's going to be an adjustment period, and it might be ugly for a bit. So I think that's where it's been my expectation almost the whole time. And hearing him say it was very confirming to me. I think once they master it, it's going to be really exciting. But from what they're doing with Pete and Clint Hurd, this is night and day. I know, like Maddie and Griff always say, well, the scheme looks the same from what Baltimore did. But that's the whole thing with sort of what Sean McVay, where everything kind of looks the same, but everything's window dressed. And to do that defensively, yeah, I'm definitely concerned that it's going to take time. Their linebackers aren't playing, or they're not practicing early. So this is sort of what I've been expecting. So Brian, I don't know if you feel any different.
He talked a little bit about this as well. He mentioned that at Michigan, when he first installed, it took a lot longer. It took a while for them to pick it up, and they had to adjust their speed. He said the first year in Baltimore, it took longer. By the second year, they picked it up a lot more quickly. That's to be expected. And so I think there is a reality of what Jeff's saying, which is no matter how well it goes, it's going to be better next year than it is this year. Like that's just like that. I think that's undeniably real.
Sure.
But I was personally, I mean, I'm also just in a very bullish place with the direction of the team versus where I've been for a while. But I loved that he was completely transparent about the fact that there were some problems, completely transparent about the fact that we're not going to just blindingly move forward and keep installing. If guys aren't picking it up, we're not going to compound it with more stuff. We're going to actually slow down, make sure that they have it, because the implication to me is that he's got a bar, like a quality bar. And it's like, we're not going to release this. You're in software, the same thing. We're not going to release this till it gets to this level. It's not about a scheduled release. We're not going to hit a date-driven thing. We're going to get to a certain level of comprehension and execution, and then we will put more on top. And I believe in that. I believe that's how you do quality in general. And it makes me more optimistic that, like, I don't feel like guys fully got what they were doing the past couple of years. It looked like chickens running around with their heads cut off. And so the fact that he's like, hey, it's not where I want it to be, I consider that pretty good news, at least in terms of his approach.
Makes sense. Okay. Hawks fan Mattman wants to know, and I'll send this one to you, Brian, I guess. How much has the relative favorability of the Seahawks schedule changed your expectations for the season, if at all? My understanding is that it's not a favorable schedule, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Well, I think that in a lot of situations, I think of it as a favorable schedule. I know that folks might point to the rest differential, that the Seahawks have a bad rest differential as a bad thing. But generally speaking, it has, all it's done is removed any potential for the schedule being the reason that the Seahawks have a bad year. I think they don't have any like periods of time where they've got crazy road trips. They don't have any like block of teams like four weeks in a row that looks like a gauntlet. There's a lot of chances for recovery. They have the bye week in the middle of the schedule. So I think they have an easy start. They really should be hopefully at least 1-0 and hopefully 2-0. If they don't start off that way, it could get rough. But yeah, I think it hasn't really affected my expectations for the year. It just hasn't negatively. Like, I was kind of bracing for another really crap schedule like the Seahawks got last year.
There's no like 4 games in a row, but after those first 2 games, you get Dolphins, Lions, Giants, Niners, Falcons, Bills, Rams, Niners. So that's Dolphins, Lions, Niners, Bills, Rams, Niners. That's like what, 5 in a 8-game stretch? That's pretty rough. But
I think there's just a lot of variability with these teams. And that's where I don't know if we know what the Falcons are going to be. I don't think we know what the Rams are even going to be. I don't think we know necessarily what the Bills are going to be even this year. So I guess I don't see a lot of that. I mean, the Niners are a juggernaut. They just are. The Packers, for me, meet that. I think they're really good. I think the Rams have been tough for the Seahawks. I'm not convinced the Rams are a juggernaut yet. I think they've still got some defensive questions to answer, but I think they're better than the Seahawks. But I don't go into that thinking that the Seahawks have no chance to beat the Rams. So I don't know. Maybe it's also a little bit. I think the Seahawks have a chance to be better than they were last year. So maybe a little bit of improvement there. And I don't know. I don't see a lot of. I think the Eagles have fallen back. I think a lot of teams have taken steps backwards in the NFC. So yeah,
the back half of that schedule is really what's going to determine the season, right? Because you get 2 games against the Cardinals. You get Cardinals, Jets, Cardinals, Packers, Vikings, Bears, Rams. And so, like, what the Jets, Vikings, and Bears are,
and
like,
the Cardinals.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, all of those teams, those could be for very bad teams, or those could be for pesky to fairly good teams, and that is going to maybe swing your season.
Just one more thing on that. I think maybe what you're getting at, Nathan, I think maybe other people, Jeff's talked about that. I don't think there's a lot of gimmies on the schedule. Like, there's not like, oh, there's a win. And I'm not sure the Seahawks and the state that they're in, like, that there's a lot of gimmies, period, for them. Like, I don't know. Yeah. So maybe that's where I think you're picking up. Like, there's not a lot of week where you just kind of take an exhale and say there's 2 or 3 wins that you're going to pick up for sure.
Right. Outside of those first 2 games.
First 2, really. And that's why I can't go in and say like 8 or 9 wins is a good year. I need to, what Nathan said is perfect. I need to see what those teams are at the end. And if they're duds and they're struggling with them, that's alarming. But if those teams are good and the Seahawks are beating them, or they're playing right with them and the Packers, and I think we'll know by the end of the year where we're trending.
Jeff, Derek Woods wants to know, if you were to be there at the very start of training camp or even attend OTAs, what are you paying attention to first, and what gets most of your attention? If that's a different answer, what are you most interested in getting insight into?
For me, I think the usage of receivers is going to be really, really interesting. Brian did a whole show on Smith and Jigba, and I know Griff has sort of been promoting how Metcalf was used closer to a Dunze. I think the usage of Smith and Jigba last year was not criminal, but it was rough. I know, Brian, you talked about his targets today, but I think of where he got targeted and tapping into his skills, and I think they did an awful job. So I think that would be the thing. You pointed out that clip where they said like they were like 4% on in cuts last year, which is basically the genesis of the Rams offense. And we've seen so I would be looking at how is Smith and Jigba being used? Is Metcalf being used differently where they can really unlock him? It's natural to put him in that Roma Dunze role and see. And Hugh Millen's talked a lot about their goal of Ryan Grubb is to really turn him into the focus of the offense. And so obviously offensive line is such a big factor with this team, but unfortunately at training camp, you can't really tell. It's one of the worst things. Same with the defensive line. So for me, it would be, are they playing into Smith and Jigba's skill set? Is DK being used differently? I think that would interest me more than anything. I don't know if everyone feels that way.
I think that makes sense. Yeah. Brian, Eric wants to know, what is the one thing that you hope the team accomplishes between now and the beginning of the season?
What is one thing I hope the Seahawks accomplish between now and the beginning of the season?
The one thing. What's the most important thing they can do between now and the start of the season?
One thing.
I'm gonna go. I will still an easy answer here and say stay healthy. But other than that,
yeah. Do you guys have answers to that? Is like the thing that came to mind to me was just what I think is their weak point right now, which is the linebacker room. Like, I want them to add someone to that room because Jerome Baker and Tyrell Dodson were out this week, and like the linebackers were John Radigan and Patrick O'Connell. Like,
I was going to
yikes.
say sign a veteran linebacker.
Yeah.
Who would that be?
There's a few guys. We've gone over. I'll pull up the list again. It's no one great. I mean, Shaquille Leonard's on that list. I think
they're one injury away there from a real. If Tyrese Knight can't play this year,
the one thing I'll say is if you're gonna have a weakness, linebacker to me is a little bit like having a bad running back room. Like, it matters. I'm not saying it doesn't hurt you, but I'd much rather have linebacker as a position to address in an offseason than defensive tackle or almost any other position. So it doesn't like keep me up at night, but I'm like, yeah, that's a really bad group that they've got behind those two starters. The names, by the way, Zach Cunningham, Shaquille Leonard, Quan Alexander, Blake Martinez, if he's still playing, Anthony Barr. I don't know if he's really not an off-ball linebacker necessarily. So it's not a lot, but there's a few names out there that at least have played football.
Played NFL football before.
Yeah.
There's Jamal Adams.
Yeah. He just visited somewhere, didn't he?
Yeah, Baltimore.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay, well, on that subject, Amani Waddell wants to know, with players like Adams, Dallas, Diggs, Wagner, Locke, etc., no longer on the roster, is there a player contract currently on the team you'd like us to move on from? He also wants to know about replacements and improvement, but I think we just talked about with the linebacker spot. Jeff, is there someone that you are actively hoping that this team moves on from? Is there someone that you are done with?
No, I don't think so. I think the big one this year would be Draymond Jones.
Yep.
I think Draymond, the personnel staff, it shocked me. Brian pointed this out, how much, when the scouts did that press conference before the draft, he was the first name they mentioned. And I think they're going to put him in that role that they used Jadeveon Clowney in last year, and he's dropped some weight, but he's in a make or break it role, and he was signed to play in a totally different scheme. His contract is it's very clean to get out of. So if he plays like he did last year, or just doesn't fit in this defense, that's a no-brainer to get rid of him next year. If he plays great, then they're going to be very happy with that contract, but he's the one that jumps off the page.
Brian, you have the only right answer.
It's Jason Myers.
How did I miss that?
I don't know, Jeff. I don't know. You fumbled that one on the 1 yard line.
Idiot.
Brian,
Yeah.
Kristen Fonte wants to know, do all Patreon and maybe YouTube proceeds still go to charity? I notice that's not really mentioned anymore.
They do. Yeah, I don't know if that will always be the case. Depends on my work situation, but I would never take money from it unless I made people aware that was going to be a change, and they'd have an opportunity to decide whether they want to keep supporting the show or not. And even if I did eventually start taking any income from this to cover a bill here or there would always be charity first. So this has been a charitable thing since it started. For folks that don't know, $260,000 already donated. I'm hoping that in August, when we make our next donation, it'll be our biggest donation ever. So kind of making a big push this year to do that. But I am currently doing this for fun. But if I'm going to potentially try to do this more permanently, at some point I'll have to take an income, like anyone that works at a nonprofit takes some sort of income from it. But we're not at that point yet, and I would never do that silently. So I appreciate the question.
And I heard you mention it to Jared Reed too. So he asked, he was promoting his mom's nonprofit. And if you've seen the Canadian dollar, I've been trying to siphon money out of this podcast for years, and Brian has stopped me. So Brian is a man of his word. I want that U.S. cash flow coming out of here, and Brian wants to give it to charity. So
we gotta grow a lot bigger if we're gonna be able to start supporting all of us. But that would be fun.
Join YouTube, please.
We've got to apparently become 49ers beat reporters and talk shit, and then we'd have enough money. But no.
Jeff, Colin has a question specifically for you. You kind of already answered it though, so I don't know if you have any more you want to add on. But what's your feel so far on Mike Macdonald's level of transparency with the media compared with Pete's?
Yeah, I'm into it. His availabilities during like the draft season was a little odd. He had weird chemistry with Schneider. He didn't seem comfortable with himself. He seemed like a nice guy, but seemed a little tightly wound. And ever since he's got on the football field, it's a totally different guy. And he's in his element. He's in his place. I like it. I learn a lot when he speaks. I learn about his approach. And maybe it'll be different when injuries are involved and whether he's protective or not. But so far, he's been really laid back and really interesting. And it's not exactly hard-hitting questions out there. So we'll see where that continues. But we don't have an Evan in the media asking the tough questions like San Francisco does. But
Bob Canidates not bringing the heat.
Maybe with all his hoodies, but I don't know. No, the answer is no. I like Macdonald so far, but we'll see what happens when he gets pushed or if the team struggles. We have a lot to learn about this guy.
Yep, agreed. Chris Bailey, I enjoyed hearing about Brian Blades on HBM. Is that what the kids are calling it now? HBM?
Yeah, is there an acronym?
I would go with HBAM, but HBM works too. It sounds a little bit like BM together. I'm not sure I like that.
I was debating whether I wanted to make that joke or not. All right, so on hawk bow movements, when evaluating expectations for JSN this year, it made me think who, if you had to pick a starting 3 receivers out of all of the receivers who have been Seahawks, who would you pick? And Chris says Jerry Rice and T.O. don't count, but I think I'm going to overrule that, but you have to get like Seahawk era Jerry Rice and T.O. if you'd like them.
Okay.
T.O., I will say, T.O. should have changed the entire history of the Seahawks. We would have never had Russell Wilson that first year if he had caught that touchdown pass. So I think T.O. does deserve consideration for the top 3.
Seahawks legend.
You never know that if Russell Wilson had not been the starter this year, the Seahawks might have multiple Super Bowls. There might have never been the animosity towards him for winning the starting job. Who knows? I didn't follow. So three receivers that have ever played that we'd want to add. Is that the question?
Yeah. Who are the top 3? What if you?
Okay, how about we each take one? We each get to pick one.
Oh, are we gonna that? Fantasy draft it?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Jeff, I'll give you the first pick.
Steve Largent.
Brian.
Joey Galloway.
Interesting. Doug Baldwin.
Yeah, I thought you were taking Doug for sure, Brian.
I mean, I love Doug Baldwin, but Joey Galloway is probably my favorite Seahawk I've ever been able to watch. Like as a watchable player, that guy was just electric.
More than like Sherm or
yeah. Joey Galloway. There was not an athlete like him running a 4.2, benching like 450. No one could keep up with him. Like he was like a Madden cheat when he first came out. Punt returns, he'd run all over the field. It was just like playing with like grade school kids. I don't know. He was a lot of fun to watch. At least his first couple years.
I think those 3 are pretty easy. I think once you get past that, it starts to get really hard because you have DK, you have Locke. Darrell Jackson should be in there.
Well, let's do a second round. Let's do a second round of the draft.
All right. Well,
you got a double pick. You got a double pick, Nate.
Oh, we're gonna snake it. We're gonna snake it.
Yeah. All right. I have not watched the Seahawks forever, so don't come yelling at me about some tungsten Armo Doyle dude that was in the 80s or something. I think the right answer is probably Brian Blades, but I'm not of the era. So I'm gonna say DK. But
I thought we're supposed to pick a person that's not on the Seahawks right now.
no,
Is
I
that
think just
the
all
question?
time. Just all time.
All time. Okay.
Yeah, all time.
I mean, Blades would be my pick because he was one of my favorite players. I was trying to think of somebody else that might be in competition.
Lockett's got to be up there.
Lockett's up there. Bobby Ingram's up there.
Yeah. Would you pick Bobby Ingram before you pick Daryl Jackson?
Yes.
Really?
See,
I
I think
watching
Daryl
him
Jackson
better.
was a better player.
That's D-Jack.
He probably was. I mean, I liked what was his name? DJ Hackett.
Yeah, DJ Hackett was awesome.
DJ Hackett was for 1 year. Joe Jurevicius's 1 year was one of my favorite Seahawks. 2005, he just caught everything.
Yeah.
Sort of Mike Williams' first year was like super fun.
That's one of the ones I'd pull. Mike Williams that 1 year, 2010.
Super fun. Yeah.
He was one of the most fun receivers. Like I thought we'd had a guy all of a sudden, and then he turned back into Mike Williams. It was
ran
like,
into a pumpkin. Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
Literally.
He turned back into a pumpkin.
All right, pick. Are you picking Brian Blades?
Yeah. Sorry. I picked Blades.
All right, Jeff.
I'll go Daryl Jackson. I really like that guy.
Wow.
All right.
No Tyler Lockett.
Tyler's
I
fun.
probably should have taken Tyler Lockett.
He's a better player. He is better.
He's definitely a better player. I just always liked Daryl Jackson. When I was on Seahawks.net, I think like this was like 2004. I think my name was like DJack82. That was so I got a soft spot for him.
That's a good.
Who was on? Was everyone on Seahawks.net?
I was at times, not a lot.
A chat group. Oh man, I think Mina.
I mean, that's where there was a lot of like people that came from Seahawks.net. That's where Doug Farrar emerged from.
Well, they should have kept him there.
Oh, ouch!
Sorry, I said it out loud.
You did.
All right, Brian, Hawks fan Matt Mann has another question regarding DK's lackluster catch percentage that you cited in your study of the team's receivers. I'm wondering if this stat only measures passes that are deemed to be reasonably catchable. In other words, some of the blame cannot be assigned to the person. All right, let's leave it there. Are they only catchable?
I understand the question. I understand the question. It was really well read, by the way, as well. So this is why we have Dana do this job, in case you're wondering, Nathan. No, it's DK is a little bit of a nuclear topic among Seahawks fans. If you say like, hey, you want to like, you think he's really good, people freak out and they're like, we should trade him. He sucks. He's whatever. And then if you say anything critical, there's this other section that is very polarizing.
Did you know that he's one of only 3 receivers alongside Randy Moss who's caught X touchdowns, Y receptions, Z yards, and so like blocked X amount of all that stuff.
Jackson Bevins is on our show now.
Yes. I mean, so setting that aside for a second, catch rate literally is just percentage of targets that you catch. That's all it is. It's not an advanced stat. It's just simple math. And this notion, because one of the things I talked about just to catch you guys up is DK has one of the lower catch rates. Like he caught 55% of his balls last year. And that's for a guy that had 119 targets or whatever it was. That's not good. Like it's not a good catch rate. I might be quoting the wrong number, but it's low. It's not he's never been a high catch percentage kind of guy. It has nothing to do with whether are catchable passes. Well, sure. I mean, it has nothing to do more with DK about whether they're catchable passes than it does with Tyler Lockett or Jackson Smith-Njigba or any other receiver that's been on the same team running in the same offense, and they have higher catch rates. And the other thing to just be aware of is Geno Smith, by just about every metric, is one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL. So the idea that somehow DK is suffering because his quarterback is throwing uncatchable passes it seems unlikely. I mean, and maybe if you went and charted it all, maybe somehow he is having that problem. But for the most part, DK is a low separation receiver. He doesn't win by like getting big separation. Tyler Lockett has made a career of doing that for the most part. Doug Baldwin did that. He's not a great contested catcher. And so you put those things together, you have a lower efficiency receiver. And that's like the issue that DK's got to either figure his way through, or he's going to continue to be a low efficiency receiver and he'll put up a lot of big numbers because he's just an amazing athlete, but he'll never be great. He'll never be an all pro level player if he can't be more efficient with the targets he gets.
Jeff, Sam Brown, the Mariners are good. I doubt it. Who is the one player you most want to see improvement from this season?
The answer has to be Derek Hall. I don't know how much he'll play. They got 4 other edge guys, but Hall's a guy that looked completely out of place. And I know I've been always the one being like, edge guys take a year to take on, and boy, Amafe had the huge jump. But Hall literally showed nothing. And there's probably a better answer that's probably a more exciting position, because Hall might just be a nothing based on how many edge guys they have. But I think if he's going to play and their defense doesn't have that, they can have what they had last year from him, where he was just a total nothing burger. Couldn't even play the run, which was supposed to be his whole thing. And he was a high pick in a really important draft. The other one is Charles Cross. And Charles Cross probably the better answer. Speaking of guys who looks like jacked and like yoked, and Brock put out a picture of him. He looks like a new man. Like, he's big. He looks comfortable, but top 10 pick. We need to see more. So those are 2 guys I'm personally watching under this new coaching staff. But Derek Hall, we need something out of him this year. If he's just a total washout, that would be real upsetting.
Random story. I went to the Storm game last night, and there were a bunch of Seahawks there, and they showed him like in the middle of the, between quarters or whatever. And they showed like JSN, and they showed Tyler Lockett, and they showed Derek Young. And sitting right next to Derek Young, it was either right next to Derek Young or JSN. I don't remember which one, but it was Charles Cross. And they made no mention of him. And he was sitting there kind of like, and me, I'm here too. And I'm like, that's sad, but also I totally get it. Okay, I'm going to take the last one. Gargom wants to know, what are your thoughts on the proposed electronic first down tracking being tried out in the preseason? Positive or negative? Extremely positive. This is so overdue. It's insane to like watch a tennis match and they know within like millimeters of whether it's hit the white line, and then we watch a football game and it's just some old dude running out there and picking up the ball and then running a little farther and then just setting it down. And it's a terrible system today. So, and the chain is a complete joke. So anything that they do will be an improvement. It's going to get bogged down in all kinds of like stupid like VAR level replays and crap like that, and then it'll be miserable. But there's a very like smart way for them to do this, and I hope they do it.
I haven't followed that in detail, so I want to, if you guys know, so like I saw someone tweet out initially that they weren't gonna, like, it's gonna get delayed till next year, and then I saw another set of tweets that was like they're gonna try it in preseason, and if it works, they're gonna use it in the regular season this year. One, is that what you're hearing?
I have no idea. I have not.
I think it was the last option.
Right. So they're gonna try it in preseason. If it works out okay, then they'll do it. Do we know if that's gonna do ball tracking as well, or is it just like line to gain? Because I'm trying to figure out if it's going to also cure the refs spotting the football problem. Because if it cures that as well, then this is a holiday for football fans, because the ball spotting issue is it sucks, man. Like in a game that's decided by inches, often these refs like misspot a ball by a yard. It's like, get that out of the game, like, for sure.
Yeah. If you at least solve the yard to gain, then that's a big portion of that problem that is solved. But if you can do it for that, I don't know why it couldn't eventually be done for other things. But I don't know what the specifics are on what they're thinking.
It's one of the most insane things about the NFL. They're a billion-dollar business. Every team's making millions of dollars, and they have these old guys running across the field with sticks to measure like the most important plays of the game. Like in a twisted way, I'm gonna miss complaining about it because it's like one of my favorite bits. But like what Nathan said with tennis, like how do they have this in tennis and this billion-dollar business can't figure out? Oh, maybe we shouldn't have these 70-year-old dudes run across the field and arbitrarily spot the ball.
It will be sad to see the like rage challenge that coaches do for ball spots that never ever work.
Be
Like
Carroll.
Pete was bad about this, but a lot of coaches do it. It will be sad to see that go. But no, yeah, it happened. It needs to happen like yesterday.
I'm trying to search to see if I can find it because I don't exactly understand what it is. Oh, whatever. I'm trying to find it on Twitter. I know the guy that tweeted it. I'm just searching on his account, but he tweets a whole bunch of crap. What is it? Like it says first down, electronic first down.
So it must just be line to gain. Hopefully that also counts for touchdowns though too.
So will it evaluate whether or not someone got a first down? Is that like I guess I'm like confused about like exactly what
it's got to be
the electronic part of this.
So Jen says it's the microchip, but it's got to be like just with like how they do the dots for players, where you can see where it is on the field, and then you just somehow do a bunch of smart stuff to overlay that with the line to gain and just see if it passes it. So just
Got it.
like RFID or whatever. That is an acronym I've heard.
RFID. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Here it is. They tried an electronic system for measuring first downs during preseason game. Yeah. If it's successful, the traditional sticks and chains method would serve as a backup.
The traditional sticks and chains method. Amazing.
The only way that would work is if they had something in the football. I guess that's my technical mind's kicking in. Like you can't just have
the football.
Yeah, it has to have something in the football to be able to determine whether that's hit it. If that's the case, then it should be able to handle the spots too.
Now the question is, if like what end of the football is it in? Are running backs going to have to make sure they carry a football the right way?
I think they can manage to have it in both sides of the football. I thought I remember something where it was like maybe in the material or something along those lines, like it's a whole coverage of the football.
Mesh microchip.
Just say AI. It's AI something and
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT. They're gonna ask ChatGPT in real time. Was that a first down? Well, is that all the Patreon questions? Those were good.
That's it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for reading those, Nathan. And thank you for the patrons, patreon.com/hawkblogger. You get access to the Slack channel where you get to ask us questions like that every week. You also get all the audio versions of HBAM and any other emergency pods that we do outside of this weekly one that's available for everybody. So definitely go join up patreon.com/hawkblogger. Really good crew in there, and I think you'll appreciate having done it. All right, guys. I don't think there's anything else to cover unless you've got items to that I haven't thought about. Anything on your mind relative to the Seahawks that I haven't brought up?
Do you think Pete's ever going to coach again?
Wait, sorry, what?
Do you think Pete's ever going to coach again?
I don't think anyone's going to hire him.
Yeah, me either.
Do you think Belichick will?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're the same age.
But Belichick's doing is this PR campaign where he's doing the media now. He did the Tom Brady roast. I think he's trying to make himself hireable.
He's also got 2 hands full of rings.
And there's Jerry Jones, who's about to have a coach.
Is this what you expected? This like Pete, it feels like he's riding off into the sunset a little bit. Like he's not getting a media job. Like that's part of what makes me think like maybe he's just done and Belichick isn't. Do you think he'll even pop back up at this point, or is he just is he out?
mean, how do you think how do you think he interprets what happened?
I think he thinks he got fired 100%.
And does he feel like that he was betrayed?
Where are you going with this, Brian?
I'm just trying to get to his mental state, right? Like, I think that if you've ever been in a situation, professionally or not, where you feel like people that you trusted most turned on you in some way, that's different than just getting fired.
Maybe his
And
reaction is to just double bird it and walk away.
yeah, a little bit of that and a little bit of retreating to where you've got goodness, like positive vibes that you can count on, whether it's family oriented, whether it's charity, nonprofit work where you're helping other people. I just wonder if that, like, maybe the icky part of the politics of it, maybe he just doesn't have the taste for that anymore, or at least it's going to take him a little while. And by the time maybe he gets over it, I don't know that there'll be anybody that's really ready to hire him.
Be interesting to see. I'm not sure this is totally what I expected for him to just more or less disappear. And I would not be. I think I think there's a good chance that you're right about just the icky vibes that he's left with. But we'll see if he makes an appearance next offseason and tries to. He supposedly tried to snipe Harbaugh's job from the Chargers, so who knows?
Yeah, I always thought Pete would walk away on his own terms. I think the fact that it was like pretty clear he got fired and that he thinks the non-football people got him, and there's probably some John Schneider stuff behind the scenes where there was that swipe in his press conference, and I think there's an evidence hearing John talk that he was pretty done with Pete. And yeah, every year he's not hired. He's a year older, and the way the whole Seahawks thing went, where they just got kind of stale and mediocre, I think he's a hard guy to hire. I think it'd have to be like the real rough spot of like a team with just terrible vibes that needs a guy like Pete to just fix the vibes. But in terms of like where the league's going, Pete doesn't fit these scheme lords and all these masterminds. And Pete's got really vanilla.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I had a friend ask me like last week, and I honestly, like, I hadn't really thought about it, but I realized that I feel very differently about it than I think I did when he, like, right when that press conference was done. Like, I was positive he was going to be trying to coach somewhere, or like, out there doing stuff, and just everything. How it's like Schneider's comments and just how he's not really been present. Pete hasn't really been present. Makes me think maybe my read originally was wrong.
All I know is when he raises the 12 flag, and it's going to happen at some point, it's going to be a good moment. It's going to be a great moment when he does that. And I would love it to be at a NFC championship, but I don't know if those two timelines will line up.
Just keep Evan away from him. Evan's going to grill him about that 2018 Dallas playoff game. So
yeah, well, that's a good tease. I am gonna on Hawk Blogger Mornings tomorrow. I am going to go over the youngest coaches in NFL history. And
you said you were going to say you have Pete on the show tomorrow morning.
No, that's Josh Cashman keeps telling people I'm having a Pete on the show. Eventually that'll be true, but I don't know when that'll be. But yeah, with Mike Macdonald being a youngest coach in the NFL, I want to look back at all the youngest coaches that have been in the NFL and see what their track records have been. So I'll be diving into that, the other end of the spectrum for Seahawks fans tomorrow morning.
Another one, Brian, I caught your show today.
Yeah.
The JSN Andre Reed comparison. I haven't heard anyone make that. That one caught my eye. Buffalo was like the local team in Toronto, and Andre Reed was a guy I watched a ton growing up.
Did you like that?
Clicked. Yeah, like body type, style. Like, there's not a lot of guys like JSN that've come to the league and they're competing with two guys getting 100 targets a year. So he's such a unique situation. But that one kind of rang like a light bulb for me. I was like, oh, that's the guy who's got the same body type as. Like,
I love that. Like, Andre Reed was not a special athlete in all senses of the term. Like, he didn't do anything like in particularly well, but he was just a great. I mean, he's like the Daryl Jacksons of that caliber, right? Like just a technician, always gets open, good hands. I think JSN can be like Daryl Jackson plus plus. I think he's got that potential. I don't know if he can be Andre Reed.
No, but I think style and body type, and because there isn't really a lot of guys like him. That was the first one that sort of clicked to me.
I appreciate you calling that out. I appreciate you.
No, I grew up watching the '90s Bills. Like,
there was somebody, I was going to actually respond to this comment. I will probably later anyway, but someone was like, I don't see it with JSN. Like he's slow and like doesn't bring anything special to the table.
Go watch that screen pass he caught to with the Browns or Bengals. I don't remember, one of those teams last year to win that touchdown. That little that was, I don't know. Watch that and tell me he's not an athlete.
Yeah, he's not straight line speed. It's the agility. His agility testing was right with like Julian Edelman.
I'm looking at it right now. Yeah.
And like Amon-Ra St. Brown, like if you watch him play, he doesn't have straight line speed. He's just a little quick guy. Like there's no reason he can't have a similar trajectory as St. Brown did if they use him correctly. But yeah, watch him move laterally. He's smooth.
He was you do not see shuttle times under 4. Like I've looked at so many prospects over the last few years. This is the first time I've ever seen a shuttle under 4. He is 393, which is 99th percentile shuttle.
Typically anything under 4.2 is very good.
Yeah. I mean, that's insane. And his 3 cone was 6.57. I mean, under 7 is usually pretty good. That's 99th percentile as well. So as Jeff's saying, like his agility is rare. I will say, as much as I agree that he was misused last year, and he had an injury, broken wrist to start the year, and like all that's real, I also think he was disappointing last year. I think just isolating him as a player, I don't think he was his hands were as good as I would have hoped. I think he had some mental lapses, being in the wrong place, running the wrong routes. That was pretty clear. There's miscommunications. So my expectations are very high for him. And I would say he still was a little bit disappointing to me, not because he was bad, but because I had really high expectations about the kind of player I think he can be. So I'm expecting a big jump for him this year for sure.
I think between like that screen pass and some of the flashes, the touchdown catch against the Eagles, like it definitely was a disappointing year in the aggregate compared to what we all expected for him. Not all that is on him. Some of it is like he definitely had more drops than I expected, but he did enough flashy stuff that I wouldn't say I'm worried about him at all.
Yeah, there was times last year where he looked like there was a Dallas game where he has that like circus catch in the end zone they didn't catch. There was times last year where he looked like that Bengals game. He's wide open down the field. Geno doesn't pull the trigger. If you add like a 60-yard touchdown to his numbers, it looks remarkably different. And overall, yeah, I thought we were all hoping for like that Cooper Cup level kind of impact right away. And he wasn't that, but so that's why I think this year where Grubbs had success with his kind of players, I think we want him to take over games on third down. And I don't think Brian's off base. I think he got slowed by the injury. He wasn't as smooth. He didn't play a lot in 2022 as a last year in college. So he had a lot to learn, and he looked like someone who had a learning curve. And hopefully we see a lot more than flashes this year.
Yeah. I'm trying to see if I can get a comparison of him to Andre Reed, but it doesn't look like it. He's too old. Yeah. Interesting. Do you guys, I did better or worse with the receiver group. Real quick question for you, and whether they're better this year or worse. And everyone's like, oh, they're the same players pretty much. I mean, Laviska Shenault's new, but for the most part, it is a lot of the same guys. Tyler Lockett getting older, Jackson Smith coming in second year, Bobo, Derek Young, D. Eskridge. Do you guys expect the receiver room to be getting better, or do you think like Tyler Lockett getting older and him being the highest targeted player means that this is going to be a group that is actually going to take a step back?
I think they should be better. I think that JSN should take a big enough step forward to offset whatever you lose from Tyler. It would be pretty concerning, I think, if they're not a better group with just the age of everyone except Lockett.
How do you feel about that, Jeff?
Yeah, I think unless Ryan Grubb is completely over his head as a play caller, and listen, that is within the realm of possibility. Obviously, we're all pretty optimistic about that guy, but I think unless that happens, I'm with Nathan. I think what JSN can do can offset anything that you lose from Lockett. And I think so much of what we saw from those three receivers, and we can make that natural transition to the three receivers Seattle has, they should be able to maximize their skill sets a lot better. And for Shane Waldron did a lot of good stuff with personnel groupings. I know Griff might disagree with me. I thought their usage of Metcalf and JSN last year was very frustrating. And I think if this coaching staff can utilize their players better, and that has been an issue in Seattle, I think there's no reason they shouldn't be better.
Yeah, that's my read as well. I think I landed on that as well. And I gotta say, and I'll let you guys go, but the amount of people that keep coming back to D. Eskridge is wild.
Really?
When I interviewed Jarek Reed and I asked these guys, and I'm like, tell me like someone that people are sleeping on that you think, has a real chance to be great. He mentioned a few guys, but he mentioned D like pretty quickly. You talked to, Gino last year, even this year, he mentioned
Jarek Reed is playing against D. He doesn't get to play against DK and Tyler Lockett. Like,
that could be true. I don't know. I'm not getting sucked back in, but I'm not in the camp of I don't ever want to see him play. I think he's terrible. I just think he's been out. I don't know if he's terrible or not, but if he could ever get on the field, I still wonder if he's a second round receiver that could do things that no one else can do. I don't know. Like,
the thing that because I was a D fan.
yes, you were.
Yeah. The thing that really soured me on him is he's been hurt a ton, and that has obviously hurt his ability to learn and get up to speed and everything. He's had stretches where he's been healthy and he can't see the field, and when he does see the field, like there's some hijinks that usually ensue. I'm not surprised that if you're practicing against this guy and he's blazing fast and actually healthy and on the field, that it's impressive stuff. I don't see there's been nothing to say that he like knows how to play the position well enough to be effective, let alone can he actually stay healthy to do it.
And that's actually hilarious because that was exactly what I was going to bring up. Every time, like even when I played rec league sports, like as a kid, there was always these guys that every time we would have practice that would look incredible, even at like the levels I played, which were not high by any means. And then the game would start and you would never see that person again. I'm guessing that D is one of those guys. It's just like the lights come on and just the game speed picks up, and it's just I had guys on every league I played in that would look like that, and we never saw that player. I think he hit it right in the head.
I think that is definitely the most likely outcome. I just when you haven't seen him enough, you never know, and so that does it leaves open the potential that something can happen.
Is there any comps historically of guys who just like can stay healthy then year 4 hit?
I'd have to go and look. I'm sure there are, but it's also not a very common
just like
thing.
Those guys that are always injured just always end up injured. I don't know.
That is definitely true. Okay, before we go, there is a question from a YouTube member, Cindy Shell. She says, do you expect Jake Bobo will get more, the same, or less targets this year? I'll throw into this. You guys can answer this real quick. Just consider that Laviska Shenault, D. Eskridge, Derek Young, Bobo are all going to be, fighting for fourth snaps, fourth targets. And when I looked back at it, it was crazy how few targets he actually got last year for the amount of talk that he warrants among Seahawks fans. So I'm curious, it's a good question from Cindy. You guys think he's going to get more targets, the same or less?
I would guess less because I think there's a theme with the other guys on the roster. Like they're looking for guys, D and Chenault and Young to some degree are going to be able to do something with the ball in their hands. You can give them, whether it's like bubble screens or into rounds or whatever. And that's not Bobo. So I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on Ryan Grubb's offense, but I don't know that he fits. And I don't know that he's going to have Pete in his corner drooling over his run blocking to get him the extra snaps either.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. He's someone that might get hit by this new coaching staff. He felt like a big, like Pete in his corner guy. Like he loved the story. He loved talking about Bobo. I don't know his targets that he had last year, so maybe we're just miscalculating how low it was, but he feels like someone that with the new coaching staff actually might go the other way.
How many targets did he have having? Did he even have he didn't even have 30 targets last year.
And I think he probably made the best play of any receiver last year.
It was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So targets wise, Bobo had 25 targets and he caught 19 of them, 76% catch rate.
That seems high.
I think he could. I still think he has the ability to be a valuable rotational receiver, but I don't know that's going to happen on this team.
But I mean, after his 25 targets, the next most targeted receiver was D. Eskridge with 1 target on the whole year. So it's a 4 receivers and then none, essentially. Situation.
One guy who could kind of emerge is in Seattle, at least, I think, is Noah Fant in this offense. Because they really tried to use the Pete Carroll ones, all tight ends to block. And now they have 2 guys who clearly do block, Farrell Brown and Barner. And if they just use him for what he is, I'm interested to see, based on what the contract they gave him, if they just kind of use him not as an inline player and just spread him out.
Tight ends weren't a big part of Grubb's offense last year, though, were they?
Westover, he was definitely a part of it. He just wasn't necessarily a high volume part of it.
He was like their Bobo, though, basically, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Everyone liked him. He was cool, but if you actually look at what he did, he caught 6 balls all year or something.
He got more than that. He got more than that. I think he was like their 4th receiver. He was effectively their 4th receiver. Yeah.
Okay.
That could be the contract by next year. We're like, we got to get rid of this.
Yeah, we'll see. I actually, that's one of the positions I have the least clarity on how Grubb will do things in the NFL. Like to your point, Nathan, it wasn't really clear. Was it because of Westover, or does he just not involve tight ends that much in his offense? I don't know.
Or because he had 3 awesome receivers.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, we've kept you long. Thank you guys. This was fun, Nathan. It's been forever, so it's great to catch up with you. Jeff, thank you for giving us at least 33% of your attention while you're watching every other playoff thing going on. And thanks to everybody who joined tonight. Patrons, patreon.com/hawkblogger, and YouTube members. The link to join either is in the description of the video. And I will be back on tomorrow morning, not much longer till I'm back on, and we'll be talking about the youngest coaches who have ever done it in the NFL and what their track records have been. So if you're curious, tune in tomorrow. We'll have more then. And by the way, just as another sneak peek, we will be having Brady Henderson's going to be joining again. We're going to have Max Sando joining again. We're going to have Rob Staten and C-Mike Spin Move, Mr. Griff, joining again. So all that's coming up. So keep an eye on the channel, subscribe, and like to follow along. All right. Until then, this has been another episode of Real Hawk Talk. Take care.